Okay, let's see. Stopped at the Mishnah in the new parak. Building. Moving on. Testament Aleph. Okay. Yeah. The Mishnah on Peites on 89a. That's good. Yeah. Thank Hashem that you're able to learn Torah every day. It's chassid for learning. We should have the base of Mikdash. Okay. So the first Mishnah we spoke about, anything that's more frequent comes before something that's less frequent. Now we have the second Mishnah is Kol HaMakodesh Mechaveri Kedem Eschaveri. Anything that's more holy is going to come before what's less holy. Yeah, that's going to give precedence. The holiness is going to give precedence. So this one overrides the other one. So the question is, if you have a conflict between holy and frequent, so sorry, recording, yeah. If it's a conflict, that we'll have to see which one takes precedence, Makudesh or the Mishnah doesn't tell us which one, if there's a conflict between frequent or holy. So Rashi says, "Sheesh b'tzad ribi kedushim imeno." But the medayek over here. Let's take a look. Let's take a look at the Mishnah. Dam chatas. The blood of a chatas, kaidim ladama oila. That would come before an oila. Now, why is that more holy? It says mipnei shehu maratza, because it accomplishes more on the holiness side. It does an atonement, which the oila doesn't do. So that must mean that it has some sort of holiness. It even atones for Zedayne Karas, something that's done on purpose that would have Karas. Ivari Oila, what about the limbs of an Oila? Kaidmin le Morichatas, that comes before the limbs of the Chatas. We're not talking about the flesh, we're talking about the organs that are put on the altar. So they're both put on the altar and they're both standing in line. Which one should go first? You know, like they're waiting over there by the ramp. Who should go up first? They say, you first. No, you first. So it says that the oila goes first. The pnei shehu kalal ishim, because its sacrifice is entirely burnt. The chatas, only part of the sacrifice is burnt. The rest is eaten. So because it's entirely burnt, that gives it some precedence. What comes out is that we have the dam of the chatas comes before the dam of the oila, but the organs of the oila come before the organs of the chatas. Yeah. Chatas kedemus la'asham. The chatas comes before an asham. Now, what are we talking about over here? The Gemara is going to explain that we're not talking about the blood, that we're actually talking about the limbs that are put on the altar. And the reason for that is shadama nitan ladalid kranas, because the blood is placed on the four corners. Now, if it would be talking about the blood, it wouldn't say that it's blood. It would say because it, not its blood. So it must be the Gemara is going to say that it's not talking about the blood, it's talking about what's going to be with the blood. That we'll see. But the limbs go on the limbs of the chatas come before the asham, because the blood of the chatas is applied to the altar more than the blood of the asham. It has four corners as opposed to two, which are four. Bali Yisayid, and also it gets poured onto the foundation. However, the asham doesn't need to be poured onto foundation. It also only has two applications of blood. Asham kaidem letaida v'al nazir. The asham, the guilt offering, comes before a Thanksgiving offering in the riyam of the nazir. Mipnei shehu kachi kachim, because the asham is holy of holies, as opposed to the taida and el nazir are of secondary holiness. They're only, it's called kachi kalim. It is said also that the asham is an atonement, and the taida and el nazir are not atonement. Taisus asks this question. Well, there are certain ashams that are not an atonement. For example, the asham Mitzayra. Yeah. And the asham nazir, which are not atonement. Okay. Both of them have the same amount of time. So in that aspect, they're equal. The question is what makes one more, what would give precedence, right? We're looking for the contrast, not the comparison. Taida vel nazir kaidin l'shlamim, the Thanksgiving offering and the ram of the nazir, that comes before a peace offering. Neshahain, those two sacrifices, nechalim l'yayim echad, they're only eaten for one day. Betun and lechem, they also have to bring bread along with it. However, the shlamim is eaten with 2 days, and you don't bring bread. Now the taida is brought 40 loaves of bread, 4 different types, 10 each, and the el nazir is 2 types of bread. Shlamim kaidin lebachar. The peace offering comes before the firstborn offering. Mipnei shehein tunin matan arba, because they have to be put on the altar. 2 applications, which are 4. Remember, on the corners. But the bachar is just 1 application. And also smicha, you have to lean on the head of the shlamim. And also nesachim, you have to bring up along the libations together with the shlamim. The bachar doesn't have any libations. But you also have to wave the chest and the thigh. Now, when we say this, what we mean to say is that since the shlamim has extra mitzvahs, we consider it holier, so we bring the shlamim first. The bachar doesn't have all of those mitzvahs, the smicha and the tenufa and etc. Bachar kaidem l'maiser. Firstborn comes before a tithing animal, the animal that was tithed. Nesha kedushasai meirechem, because it's holy from birth. The maiser only became holy when you counted it through and it's jumping through the fence. And also the bechar is holier because it gets eaten by the kayanim, as the meiser, on the other hand, is eaten by anyone. Meiser kaidem la'ifas. The meiser, even though it's the least of the holy of the sacrifices, but nevertheless it still comes before the birds. Neshu zevach, because this is an animal that's slaughtered with a knife, as opposed to the birds which are slaughtered with their fingernail. The Yish Kedesh Kadashim, and it also has Kedesh Kadashim inside the Meiser. Even though Meiser is not Kedesh Kadashim, it's Kachim Kalim, it's lesser holiness. But in the Meiser, there's 1 or 2 things that are Kedesh Kadashim. What is that? Damei Ve'imurav. The blood which is placed on the altar is considered Kedesh Kadashim. And also the Imurim, the limbs that go up, those are considered Kedesh Kadashim. In the Kachim Kalim, you have those two aspects. The birds come before the flower offerings. Because it's a type of blood, it has life, as opposed to the flower offerings, which are just vegetarian. Yeah. What about two types of minchas, of flower offerings? I have the flower offering. That's because someone did a sin, but he can't afford the regular animal, so he brings the meal offering. And then I have another flower offering that was just being brought because someone wants to give a donation. It's called the nedava. So it says the sin offering comes before the nedava. Neshi balachet, because it comes to atone for a sin. It doesn't say the word atone. It says because it comes from a sin. So therefore, it's considered holier. Kata seif kedemes laila seif. The bird that's a sin offering bird comes before the elevation offering bird. And also when you makdish the 2 birds, because sometimes the person has to bring 1 bird for a chatas, 1 bird for an ayla, like a yeledes or something. So what you do is you do the chatas you consecrate the chatas before the oila. Okay. There was also a part in separating the neck. Yeah. There were differences where it was applied. If it went on top, it went below. The if was on the bottom. That's interesting because we could have said that the chatas should be second because it goes on the bottom. The if goes on the top. That's more holy. But we have a pasuk that says the chatas comes before the idol. We'll see. You drink that Buffy?
Oh, you're
Okay, Minani Mili. The Gemara asks, how do we know that the blood of a chatas comes before the blood of a oila? And then we're going to discuss that the limbs of an oila come before the limbs of the chatas. The Tanur Rabbanu was taught in the Brisa. Brisa quotes a pasuk. Pasuk is talking about the inauguration of the Levium. The Levium were taking over from the firstborns. Remember, they had to switch to 23,300. Remember that whole story. So it says that they were going to bring a sacrifice, and it says a parsheni ben bakar tikach lachatas. The first one would be an oila. The second one would be a chatas. Well, why does it say the second one? If it's I'm sorry, it's actually two chatas. They're both a chatas. Two chatas. If it's coming to tell me that you have two chatas, so let me look up the pasuk. 1 second. Pasuk is Bamidbar. Yes. Bamidbar 8:8. Says, okay, they should inaugurate them. They should then be inaugurated as follows. They should take a young bull as a burnt offering, so it's an oila. Parben bakar as an oila, to atone for the communal idol worship of the golden calf in which the Levites did not participate. They add that in. Must be from Rashi. With its accompanying meal offering of fine flour mixed with oil. Okay. Take a second offering to atone for the same sin as a young bull as a sin offering. There's going to be an oila here and in the chatas, and it says the second one. That's what we're talking about. That's what we're talking about here. Why does it say the second one? Second young bull. Okay. So, it's coming to tell me that maybe there's two chatais. They say it's not two chatais. It's not two sin offerings. One of them is an oila. Why does it say a second one you take as a chatas? I could have thought that the chatas comes first. Over here we say that the chatas comes second. Parsheni, if comes second, maybe an oila should always come before a chatas. That's what we're saying. The chatas come second. Maybe every part of the oila comes before the chatas. So Talmud Laimar, I have another pasuk that says, it says you should make one of them a chatas and one oila. See, the chatas comes first. Yeah? So it's sort of a contradiction. So it says, okay, it said, how do you resolve this contradiction? The chatas comes first, the oila comes first. It says, dam chatas kedemes adam oila. The blood of the chatas comes before the blood of the oila. Because it has an appeasement, it has an atonement. However, the oila, the limbs of the oila come before the limbs of the chatas. So it says, Vespar Sheni, tikach lachatas, it's talking about the limbs going up. The second one, that would be the limbs. V'aseyas echad chatas. V'sachar is talking about the blood. The blood of the chatas comes before the blood of the oila. The limbs of the oila come before the limbs of the chatas. A very oila, we say over here that the limbs of the oila, they come before the chatas because the entire oila is burnt. Amai. I think the Shittim Kubetz adjust this a little bit. Adjustment. Ve'ima, we should say. Why do we say that when we talk about the blood of the chatas comes before, which part does the atonement? Just the first application of blood. After that, it doesn't come first. What we should do is we should let the chatas be applied first, and then we should do the oila. Then we should do the rest of the chatas. But the other three applications of the blood, the oila should come first because it doesn't atone. It says, Amaravina, the source where we got that the blood of the chatas comes before the blood of the oila, that was from the Levium's inauguration. And even though that chatas was like an oila because it doesn't come actually for an atonement, Rashi said that it comes for the Avodah Zarah. There you go. I guess it wasn't specifically like that. So, let me bring that other chumash, the red chumash on the top, the Bamidbar one. No, not that. Go over it to the, yeah. Let's see what Rashi says on Bas. Lakhu Parben Bakar, the Hi Ayla, Mishakasa Lasesachad Ayla, who Karban Sibar Ba'Avodah Zarah. It's an offering brought on behalf of the entire community to atone for committing idolatry. Parsheni, this is the second. Why did I say the second one? This chatas is not eaten. Okay. Shasar Hayalim Lavi, the chatas of Avodah Zarah. Really, this is a special hirasha because really it's also a chatas of Avodah Zarah. So this what the way Rashi explains the psukim doesn't fit with our Gemara. So our Gemara is saying that this is not considered; these are not considered sin offerings. Nevertheless, we say that the chatas comes first. The fact that the pasuk says that it comes first, even though it's not an atonement, tells me that I don't need to have specifically the first application of blood coming before the other three. The coming before, that's only that I should divide up the first application with the other applications, because it doesn't have to do with the atonement. It's a special gzeir sakasav. However, Marav Amri in Eretz Yisrael, they gave a different answer. They said, so since we started doing the applications, we don't stop in the middle. You finish it. Maybe Rashi and Chumash is following the way they learned in Eretz Yisrael, and it actually is an atonement, and we don't have the answer, the first answer. Anyway, and now we're going to have a bunch of ibailahus because the Mishnah lumped together a lot of things, what takes precedence before what, but it didn't give us every detail. The ibailahus in the yeshiva, they're going to ask all the details that the Mishnah didn't say. Dam chatas ve'vari ayla. Which one comes first? We only had dam chatas and dam ayla. The blood of the chatas, blood in the blood, and we also had a vari ayla come before the vari chatas, the limbs of the ayla. But what about the blood of a chatas standing on line with someone holding the vari ayla? Which one goes first? Do you apply the blood first of the chatas, or do you do the limbs of the ayla? Because each one takes precedent over the other one, right? Is mem kaidim. So dam chatas kaidim b'nei shemras. Should we say the blood comes first because it's an atonement, Maybe the limbs of the Ayla come first because they are entirely, that comes from an animal that's entirely burnt. So Tashima, come and listen. I'm going to try to be Medayik from the Mishnah, and then it's not going to work out. It says, Dam Chatas Kaidim Ladam Ayla. Blood of a Chatas comes before blood of the Ayla. So we're Medayik. We deduce. Comes before Dam of Ayla. Dam Ayla hu dekadim. It only comes before the blood of the Ayla. But before the limbs of the Ayla, it won't come. It means the limbs of the Ayla come before the blood of the Chatas. Yeah, or else it would have said it comes before the limbs of the Ayla. Where it says Adarabba. On the contrary, you can't prove from that. Because Miseifa, if you look at the end of the Mishnah, it says Eivari Ayla Kaidmin Leimori Chatas. The limbs of the Ayla come before the organs of the Chatas. It says Leimori Chatas hu dekadim. They only come before the Murim of the Chatas, but Ladam Chatas like them, but they don't come before the blood. The blood of the Chatas comes first, which means that it's exactly the opposite of what we just said. This is called Diyukim Saisrim. The implications are contradictory. We can't learn anything from our Mishnah regarding this. We have another question. Dam Ayla ve'imori Chatas. The blood of an Ayla, this is both things come second. The blood of the Ayla comes second to the blood of a Chatas, and the Imuri Chatas comes second to the Imuri Ayla. So which one comes first now? Izmem Kaidim. Dam Ayla Kaidim. Should we say the blood of the Ayla Kaidim? It comes first to Kasim Mikayach Kol, because it's coming from a sacrifice that's entirely burnt. That's logic we usually use on the limbs, but here we're using it for blood. Maybe we should say that the limbs of the Chatas comes first because it comes from a sacrifice that the blood is an atonement. That's logic we used for the blood. Now we're using it for the limbs. So the Gemara says, Tashimal, let's try to learn from our Mishnah. It says, Dam Chatas Kaidim Dam Ayla. We learned in our Mishnah, the blood of the Chatas comes before the blood of an Ayla. Okay, so but here we don't have either of those. Well, we do. We have the blood of the Ayla, but we don't have the blood of the Chatas. So we say, Dam Chatas hu dekadim Dam Ayla. It's only the blood of the Chatas that comes first. Avalei Muri Chatas Lai. But the limbs of the Chatas come second, which would mean that the blood of the Ayla would come first. Says Adarabba. Miseifa. On the contrary, if you look at the Seifa, you're going to see that you're going to come out with exactly the opposite. It says, Eivari Ayla Kaidim Leimori Chatas. The limbs of the Ayla come before the organs of the Chatas. Eivari Ayla Kaidim Leimori Chatas. It's only the limbs of the Ayla that come before the limbs of the Chatas. It's only the limbs of the Ayla comes before the limbs of the Chatas. Aval Dam Ayla Lai. But the blood of Ayla doesn't come before the organs of the Chatas. Do the organs of the Chatas first. We have the same problem that we had with the Gemara before, is that it's Dukim Saisim, contradictory. Yeah. They have another question. Dam Ayla v'dam Asham. The Asham, we put in the Mishnah, we put it after the Chatas comes before the Asham. We didn't say what about an Ayla and an Asham. Interesting. My Gemara here, that's a chart, but it doesn't have the precedent chart. It just has like what was done with each animal. Yeah. Archibald doesn't have that chart?
Well, after the shear call.
Okay, so we're asking now Dam Ayla and Dam Asham, right? Ezmem Kaidim, which one comes first? Dam Ayla Kaidim, should we say that the blood of the Ayla comes first to Kasim Kayach Kalal? Because the Ayla is entirely burnt. Means it's holier. Or maybe we should say that the blood of Asham comes first to Kasim Kayach the Mechaper. because the asham is an atonement. An atonement, we said by the chatas, it gives precedence. So tashma. So coming here from our Mishnah, it says dam chatas kaidem dam oila. Chatas comes before the oila. Aval dam asham loy. But it doesn't say that the blood of an asham comes before the blood of the oila. So only the chatas comes first. Well, the Gemara answers. Gemara says that that's not a proof. It's like it's doicha. It pushes off the proof. Really, it wanted to say the damasham. I did the but it wanted to say at the end. It says that the limbs of an oila come before the limbs of a chatas, the organs of a chatas. So the itana lemuriyasham, because if it would say that comes before the lemuriyasham, have meaning lemuriyasham with the kadmi, lemurichatas lekadmi. I would have thought that it only comes before the limbs of a asham, but the limbs of a chatas actually come before the oila, because the blood comes first. Shemachi tanachatas. Therefore, because we wanted to say back and forth, want to say blood of the oila comes before. We said the blood of a chatas comes before the blood of an oila. And if it was the blood of the asham, it also came before the blood of the oila. And we would have to say, when it came to the limbs, we would say, if the asham also did, then it would have said the blood of the asham comes before the blood of the oila. But the Gemara says that if we would have done that, then when we would have flipped it, we would say that the limbs of the oila come before the organs of the asham. So then I would have thought that maybe it only comes before the organs of the asham, but it doesn't come before the organs of the chatas. So we had to say that, and because in the end we had to say we're dealing with the chatas. Therefore, when we dealt with the blood, we also dealt with the chatas, because we wanted to have the consistency, the symmetrical. This goes, Tashima. Come and listen. Chatas kaidem nasham. Chatas comes before an asham. Oh, so we have a chatas comes before an asham. What's going to be with the blood of an oila? Chatas with the kadma asham. Aval oila loy. Only a chatas comes before an asham, but the oila doesn't. My love, what are we talking about over here when we said a chatas comes before the asham? Are we talking about dam, the blood, which means that the blood of a chatas comes before the blood of the asham, but the blood of an oila would not come before the blood of asham. It says loy. It's not a proof, because maybe we're talking about imurim. Say the chatas comes before the asham. It's talking about the limbs, the organs of the chatas come before the organs of the asham. You don't know what's going to be with the blood. Dekanami, and I'll prove it to you that that's the pshat. Diktani mipnei shedama nitin. It says, why does the chatas come before the asham? It says because its blood is applied on the four corners. Well, if it was talking about the blood, then it wouldn't have said shedama nitin. It would have said it is nitin. We're talking about the blood. You don't have to repeat the blood to say the blood, because it's blood. It is. Rather, we're talking about something else, and we're explaining why the organs of the chatas come first. We say because the blood of the chatas has a significance, therefore we put the organs first. Still don't have a answer. What's going to be about the asham, the blood of a asham, relative to the blood of a oila? Okay. I think it would be obvious that the blood of a chatas comes before the blood of asham because it's on four corners. Yeah, that would be obvious. The question is blood of an oila and the blood of an asham. Okay, chatas kedemes. We say that a chatas comes before an asham because its blood is put on the four corners. Adarabba, Gemara says on the contrary, asham kadam. We should have the guilt offering should come before the sin offering. Kitzvah, because the Torah tells us how much you have to spend on it, and it says two coins, right? Two silver coins.
That's what skull.
Yeah. Oh, someone just sent me that we should start buying this half shekel. You see that they're minting a half shekel coin that we're going to need when Mashiach comes to give the half shekel. So I didn't see a price on it though.
Is it digital?
No, it's not digital. It's an actual silver coin. That's a picture of the Beis Mikdash on it. It's the half shekel weight. Someone's going to show up and say, no, the weight's off.
Yeah.
Okay. So, Sheken Yesh Kitzvah, because it has a set price. That means that the asham should be holy. At the chatas, you can spend anything you want. Doesn't tell you how much you have to spend. Nevertheless, even though the price of the sacrifice is set by the asham, but the more applications to the altar make it considered holier. And ribidim is be'achadif. Yeah, the more applications make it holier, so the chatas comes first. Asham kaidim l'tayda. The guilt offering comes before the Thanksgiving offering. And it also comes before the El Nazar, the ram of the Nazar. Marset chulu, etc. Adarabba. On the contrary, Taida val Nazar kan milashim. They should come. The Taida should come before the Asham. Why? Shekain tu'unim lechem, because they require bread, and the Asham doesn't require bread. It has more mitzvahs, then it comes first. It says afilachi kach kadashim adifi. Nevertheless, the Asham is holy of holies. The Taida and Nazar are secondary holiness. We learned that the holier it is, it comes first. Taida val Nazar, they come before shlamim because they're eaten for 1 day and the shlam is eaten for 2 days. Adarabba, Gemara asks, shlamim kadmi, the shlamim should come first, the peace offering. Because there's a concept of a communal peace offering, which we don't have by a taida. We don't have a communal Thanksgiving offering or a communal Nazar offering. So we should have the shlamim should be first. Where do you have a communal peace offering? You have on Shavuos, bring two lambs of a peace offering. The filohachi, nevertheless, nacholim liyamechad adifi, the fact that it's eaten for 1 day, that comes before the fact that it could be done with the community.
Why did they
Since it could be done with the community, so therefore even a private one should come first. Because it has under the same umbrella, community offerings, so we give it precedence. We say no. The fact that it's eaten in 2 days makes it come later. Now we have a question. If you have the Thanksgiving offering plus a ram of a nazar, which one comes first? Does Taida Kadma, we should say the Taida comes first. Because it has 4 types of bread as opposed to the nazar, which only has 2. When the nazar brings a sacrifice, he has to bring together with it a ram that's a shlamim. I'm sorry, we're talking about the ram of the shlamim. He has to bring together with the ram of the shlamim, he has to bring an oila and a chatas. The Gemara says, Tashima, come and listen. Zu, kaidemes lezu. We have a brisa, this is not from our Mishnah. Brisa says that the Taida comes before the El Nazar. Why? Shazu tuna arba mini lechem. The zu ena tuna ela shnei mini lechem, because the 4 types of bread comes before the 2 types of bread. So the Taida comes before the Nazar. Shlamim kaidlim b'char. The peace offering comes before the firstborn offering. Adarabba, b'char kaidlim. On the contrary, we should say that the b'char comes first. Why? Because it was holy from birth. It's also eaten by the kainim in the shlamim that we're comparing it to. The shlamim, it has the application is two which are 4, but it's eaten by everyone, even by Yisrael. The extra mitzvahs of the shlamim take precedent over the fact that the bechor was born holy. Yeah. Bechor kaidem, the bechor comes first before a ma'aser. Where it says Adarabba, on the contrary, ma'aser kaidem, we should have the ma'aser, the tithing animal first. Because there's a concept where if there's a mistake in the ma'aser, and when the 9th one is going out, he calls it the 10th. And when the 11th one is going out, he calls it the 10th by mistake. Those become holy as well. So we see that the Meiser has this significance that it could consecrate the 9th and the 11th. So we should say that that comes first. It says, nevertheless, the fact that it's holy from birth, that takes precedence over the fact that it could consecrate the 9th and the 11th as well. Meiser Kaidim Leifus, the lowest of the sacrifices, which is the Meiser, comes before the birds. It says, Adarabba, Eifas Kadmi. On the contrary, we should have the birds first. Shekain Kachi Kachim, because they're holy of holies. It says, nevertheless, Min Zevach Adef, the fact that it's a sacrifice comes before the birds, which are holy of holies. Amar Avina Bar Shila, Imuri Kachim Kalim Shiyotzu Lefnei Zrikas Dam Psulim. Okay, a little complex sugi over here. Kachi Kalim are sacrifices which are of lesser holiness. There's no laws of Me'ilah on these sacrifices, right? Someone has personal use from the sacrifice. He doesn't have to, from the sacrifice. He doesn't have to bring any carbon Me'ilah, Shem Me'ilah. He doesn't have to pay. Now, one second. After the blood is sprinkled, then there's organs of the sacrifice that need to go on the altar. And then the Me'ilah will be applied specifically to those organs. What happens if the organs of Kachi Kalim, of these sacrifices, they left the Azara before the blood was sprinkled? So, the blood wasn't sprinkled yet, so they're not Kachi Kachim. They don't have the laws of Me'ilah. So we say maybe they shouldn't have the laws of Yotzei either. Because think of it like this. Before the blood sprinkled, it's hardly holy. After the blood sprinkled, what are you going to do with it? You're going to take the sacrifice outside and eat it in the city. You're going to eat it in Yerushalayim. The organs are going to go on the altar. So the organs are not leaving the courtyard. What we're saying over here is, the organs are leaving. They're going to be puzzled. We're going to have soon the basar. That's coming up soon. So yeah, the organs become puzzled when they leave, even before the blood was sprinkled. After the blood sprinkled, for sure. But even before, B'tanatuna, the Gemara says that we have a Mishnah that supports this statement of Ravina Bar Shila. It says in the Mishnah that the Meiser comes before the birds. Mipnei shehu zebach v'yeshnei kachi kachim damav ve'imurim. Why does the Meiser come before the birds? The birds are holy. They are kachi kachim. It says, well, the Meiser is a sacrifice, and plus it also has two aspects of it which are holy of holies. That's the blood and the imurim, the limbs that go on the altar. It's a classical kachi kalim sacrifice, but the organs are going to go on the altar. I get what you're saying when you say that the little organs go on the altar, and you're trying to contrast this with the birds because the birds don't have organs that go on the altar. Chatas Saif doesn't have that. So Meiser is going to have an advantage over a bird offering. Eladam Yisa, but what about the blood? Birds have blood, the application of the blood. So why are you giving me the advantage of the Meiser? Because it has blood that's holy of holies. The birds also have blood. Alav Kamash Milan, it must be telling me, She'imurin Kidama. It's coming to tell me, not that this has blood, this doesn't have blood. It wants to tell me that the limbs of the Meiser animal, the organs that go up on the altar, they have the same status as the blood, which is Ma Dame Lifnei Zrika. Just like blood exists before it's sprinkled. Yeah? Blood gets sprinkled, but before it's sprinkled, it also exists. So Afimurim Kaidim Zrika. Also the limbs, also the organs exist before the Zrika. Now what does it mean it exists? It means Vikakari Lahu Kachi Kachim. That just like the blood before it's sprinkled is considered Kachi Kachim, so too the limbs before the blood is sprinkled are called Kachi Kachim. And that's therefore if they leave the courtyard, it's considered Pasal, Sul Yotzei. Just like the blood can't leave, the blood can't leave before it's sprinkled, so to the limbs can't leave before it's sprinkled, and if it does, it becomes puzzle. Okay, now that was a support for Ravina Bar Shila from the Mishnah. Name a Messiah. Let's bring another support from Machlekes Rabbi Yechon Reish Lakish. Basar Kachim Kalim Shiyatzu Lefnei Zrikas Damim. Now we're deviating from the last case with one aspect. Instead of talking about the organs, we're talking about the flesh of the sacrifice. Now, the flesh of the sacrifice actually is eaten in the city. It doesn't have to stay in the temple. So, take it to Ben Yehuda, right? And grill it. Basar kachgam shiyatza lifnei zrikas dam. Rabbi Yechanan amar kasher. Rabbi Yechanan says it's kasher. Rish Lakish amar pasal. Rish Lakish says it's pasal. Classic machlekes Rabbi Yechanan Rish Lakish, and the Gemara gives us the reasons. Rabbi Yechanan amar kasher hayil b'seifei latzis. Rabbi Yechanan says it's kasher because you're going to take it out in a few minutes anyway after you sprinkle the blood, so it doesn't have to stay in the courtyard. You're about to take it out, sprinkle the blood, and you take it out. Rish Lakish amar pasal. Rish Lakish says it's pasal. Adayin legias manalatzis. But first you have to sprinkle the blood before you take it out. You didn't sprinkle the blood yet, so the timing. Rish Lakish says the timing is off. Now the Gemara is medayek to prove to us the din of Ravina Bar Shila. Ad kan pligi. When does Rabbi Yechon Rish Lakish argue that's only ela b'basar? That's only regarding the flesh. Aval beimurim lai, but they don't argue. Why? Because everyone would agree that the organs that leave are pasal. The flesh that leaves, so machlekes Rabbi Yechon Rish Lakish, if it's pasal or not. The organs, no one argues. They didn't discuss it. It must mean because they agree that it's pasal, which is what Ravina Bar Shila said. Where it says, well, it's not a strong proof, because who din de beiburim nami pligi? It's very possible that they're actually arguing about the organs as well that are supposed to go on the altar that are not eaten. So why they argue specifically about the flesh? Coming to tell me that Rish Lakish says even though it's taken out later, still puzzle. Now, Pila Basa, the Sefer Latzis, Omer Adayin Legias Man Latzis, still puzzle. Now, this Gemara Tesis asked this, that in a way it should have done it the opposite. It should be a kasha on Ravina Bar Shila, because the fact that Rabbi Yechon Rish Lakish don't argue about the limbs, they don't say that they're arguing about the limbs. They only say they're arguing about the flesh. And we say, well, why didn't they mention the limbs? They just mentioned the flesh. We wanted to say how strict Rish Lakish is. Gemara should have said, we wanted to say how lenient Rabbi Yechanan is. And even by the limbs, he's lenient. And it's much better to say how someone's lenient is stronger than to say how someone is strict. Right? Anyone could be strict. Right? You have a question on Shabbos, throw it out. Cautious. Right. Leima ketanai. Maybe this is a machlekes tanai. A muri kachim kalim, the din of Ravina Bar Shila that says that the limbs become puzzle if they leave. A muri kachim kalim just lifnei zrikas damim. The limbs of kachim kalim that leave before the sprinkling of the blood. Exactly the case. Rabbi Lezer, I marry in my elamem. Rabbi Lezer doesn't tell us if they become puzzle, but he does say that there's no me'ilah. There's no me'ilah by these limbs. The blood wasn't sprinkled yet. There's only me'ilah after the blood sprinkled, right? Well, then the blood was sprinkled, but nevertheless they weren't in the right place when the blood was. And
sounded like that was like a kind of like a fact. Otherwise, because eventually they wouldn't. It's gonna be sprinkled in. So might as well just make it pass on now.
It left, and then it was brought back in, and then the blood was sprinkled, right? Question is, when it left, did it become invalid? Yeah. It went, if the blood was sprinkled while it was out, that would be obvious. I think what we're saying is that it was brought back in.
Because if they don't, if they don't have funds, then the other question is, like, does it become also like fungus and back after it went away?
Look in your notes. If it says in the beginning when it's quoted Ravina Bar Shila, did it say that it was brought back in?
No focus.
So, and this way, right? Ravina Bar Shila. Okay, number 30. That even before the Zrika, they are considered Kachi Kachim in regard that they are invalid, taken out of the courtyard. Even if they are brought back into the courtyard before the Zrika, they remain invalid and must be burnt in the place designated for burning invalid sacrifice. Yeah. So even if it's brought back in, but the fact that it went outside already makes it invalid. And now, Dr. Stein, what's going on? I finished the talk. Okay, so we say over here that Rabbi Eliezer, we're quoting a machlekes now regarding limbs of a kachin kalim that left before the zrikas down, before the blood was sprinkled. Rabbi Eliezer says there's no meila. He also says in chayalim mishum pigel. There's no laws of pigel. If the sacrifice was slaughtered with intention to sprinkle the blood out of its allotted time, or to eat it out of its allotted, to burn it out of its allotted, all of those things which would normally turn a carbon into pigel, it's not going to turn it into pigel. Also, the laws of Neisser. If it's left over out of the time that's allowed for it, which is usually 2 days, if it's left over, and that's a different iPad. Oh. So if it's left over, the laws of Neisser don't apply. And the laws of Neisser only of Neisser Ibn, right? The sacrifice that's left over out of its allotted time is the chi of kares, right? If you eat it, I think it's very strict. But that's only, I know pigel is if it's thoughts of left, that's kares. Nicer, I think also. So, but that's only for things that were eligible to be eaten. But because this was not eligible to eat, so it doesn't have the laws of nicer. And tameh is also someone that contaminates it. It doesn't have the same laws of contaminating this flesh because it was already puzzled. Tell me. No, the thought of leaving it out is only kares if they eat it. No, the kares doesn't go on the kayan that thinks it. The kares goes on the person that eats it when there was thoughts of leaving it out, leaving it over, not leaving. Okay, yeah. So yeah, in general, we have to have when it comes to punishments, you have to have the clear pasuk. You can't have a kalvachaymer for punishment. You have a rule, Einain Shin Min Adin. You don't have kalvachaymer for punishments. I think that's what it says. Okay, so now the Gemara says, Rabbi Akiva says exactly the opposite. It says, no, by these organs, there is all of these laws. My love, what are we talking about? But the other we're talking about where it was taken out, and then it was brought back in. And it was there by the sprinkling of the blood. About pligi, and this machlekes is simple. Mar Sava Rabbi Eliezer holds mifsal b'yaitze. Why don't you have all these laws? Because it already became possible. Mar Sava Rabbi Kiva holds mifsal b'yaitze that it's not possible. Which means that the law of Ravina Bar Shila is only going to fit with Rabbi Eliezer. According to Rabbi Kiva, it doesn't apply. Yeah. So the Ravina Bar Shila is actually picking one side of a machlekes. Amar Rav Papa says, "B'dader lino kli amalei pligi." If the organs were brought back into the courtyard, and it was there at the time of the sprinkling of the blood, then everyone would agree that it's going to be chayev because of pickle naisatami and meila and everything. V'acha b'disnu avrei pligi. The whole machlekes is when it's outside. And no one's going to fit with Ravina Bar Shila. Ba'apligi. Marsav reigns Rika Mayalas Liyaitse. Marsav is Rika Mayalas Liyaitse. When it's outside, does this Rika help? Machlekes Rabbi Elazar and Rabbi Akiva. Do we say that the laws of Meila, do we say that when the Zrika happens, it's going to affect it's going to take effect on the organs that are outside the temple? It's machlekes between Rabbi Elazar and Rabbi Akiva.
At the moment, should we be ubiquitous at the moment? Whatever it's holding at the moment, how could it be corrected later?
There are two possibilities here. One possibility is that the organs were taken out and the blood was sprinkled while they were outside. Other possibility is the organs were taken out and then they were taken back in and the blood was sprinkled. So then if that's the second one is the case, then that would be the case of Ravina Bar Shila. It would come out that we have machlekes. Ravina Bar Shila's halacha is really a machlekes. It's really paskening like one side, which is a problem. We don't like when Amirayim just paskin like one side and don't tell us that. It makes it like it's a brand new din. Really, it was paskin like Rabbi Elazar. So we say that no. The machlekes Rabbi Elazar and Rabbi Akiva has to do with when it was not taken back in. The blood was sprinkled when it's outside. Do we say that the laws of Meila apply to this? Now, back to what Ravina Bar Shila was talking about. He wasn't talking about when it was outside. He's talking about when it was taken back inside and the blood was sprinkled. He says that it's possible.
It's like a brand new thing.
Yeah, a different case.
Excuse me for interrupting.
It's okay.
I came in late. You mentioned these names for Fort Schleimer.
No.
There was an attack in Sydney and people died. Rest of injured. Chaim Jewel posted this.
Oh my gosh.
So yeah, so
Shliach
they attacked the Hanukkah party. So if you could just read the
Wow,
names so
they
we
killed
can
the shliach.
continue learning.
Who's the shliach?
Hold on.
Okay, so we're learning for Shleima Fachai Bashter Nasara, Yisrael Yitzchak, Ben Shter Nasara, Yonatan, Ben Sipor, Yaakov Dak, Ben Penina, Reuven Ben Manya, Fibel Lezer, Ben Deborah Bella Halevi, Yaakov Ben Ethel, Arsan Ben Amalia, Yaakov Alevi Ben Miriam. Wow, crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah. Baruch Hashem, my son left the event literally 5 minutes before the shooting started.
Oh my gosh. Who's there? Shalom
My
Ber?
son, Shalom Ber, yeah. He was there doing Mivtzoyim. He sent me pictures of his Mivtzoyim in the location.
Wow.
Unbelievable.
Miracle.
Unbelievable. One of his very good friends, also a Bacher who's on Shlichus in the Chabad house, got shot in the stomach and he's in surgery.
Wow.
And the unfortunately the death toll went up to 12. It was 10, now they say 12.
Who's the shliach there? Who is the
Schlanger.
huh.
On the beach.
He passed away, Rabbi Schlanger. They shot him first, apparently. Unbelievable. Sorry.
Crazy.
It says after that, I'm looking on our Sheva, someone managed to grab the gun from the shooter to stop the massacre. So, Baruch Hashem, at least some guns and strength.
Wow. Yeah. Okay. Hashem should protect us.
Right.
Oh, it's more than one terrorist.
Where are we holding over here? Rav Papa says that Rav Papa says that it's not a lema ketanai because it's a different machlek. It's talking about a different case. Someone asks on Rav Papa, it says 1 second. But Rav Papa, who the Amar, but how could you say this? Rav Papa is the one that he himself says, that if the organs were taken out of the courtyard and they were not brought back in, then everyone agrees that the zrika doesn't work. So how could you tell me that? How could you tell me that Rabbi Akiva holds that there is pigel, that there is meila pigel nicer if it's outside? Ella b'dailino legavai pligi. Machlekes has to be when it was taken back in at the time of the zrika. That's the case. We have a contradiction in Rav Papa, and also we're left with the problem with the lema ketanoi. Marian says, "Hani mili." This that Rav Papa said. Oh, that case. 1 second. Second. Rav Papa didn't say it about the same case. Rav Papa said about the kivsei atzeres, the lambs that of Shavuos. That there was the loaves of bread. There's 2 loaves of bread that come along with those lambs. If the 2 loaves of bread were taken out, Rav Papa on that case says that if it was sprinkled, the blood was sprinkled while the loaves of bread were outside of the azara. So we say that doesn't help for those. All the laws that would apply to the sacrifice don't apply to that bread because it wasn't there at the time. It wasn't in the courtyard at the time of the sprinkling. It's not. Yeah, it's like the sprinkling doesn't affect that. So if that's the case, so we think that should be the same thing by us when the limbs were taken out. Remember, we're talking about the limbs taken out. So the Gemara says, "Hani mili." When does Rav Papa say that when talking about that case? L'gabish alechem the lab gufi de zivcha. Papa says that everyone would agree that the sprinkling doesn't affect it because it's talking about the loaves of bread that are not from the actual sacrifice. Abli murim the gufi de zivcha. But when it comes to the limbs of the sacrifice, then the isnu avroi pligi. Then Rabbi Lezer and Rabbi Kiva would argue about that because that's the sacrifice itself. That you can't distance it. You can't extricate the. You can't separate those. Okay. Don't ask me to spell it. Okay.
First you have to announce the word. Extra.
Okay. Okay. The next Gemara says, "Oifes kaidman." Says that the birds come before the carbon mincha. Because why? Because the birds have blood, and the mincha is just a meal offering. It says, Adarab, on the contrary, menachas kaidmas. We should say that the mincha should come first. Why? Shekin yeshtem b'tzibur k'biyachid. Because there's a concept of a carbon mincha in the tzib with the community. There's no such thing as the community bringing a bird. What mincha is in the community? The omer and the shtei alechem. Those are 2 flour meal offerings, right? The omer was barley and the shtei alechem was wheat on Shavuos. Those are community sacrifices. Oh, they were measured, right? Okay, yeah, true. So, nevertheless, the Gemara says, nevertheless, the fact that it's an actual sacrifice gives it precedence over the meal offerings. over the vegetarian offerings. Yeah. Minchas Chayte, tell me the gluten-free takes precedence over there. Minchas Chayte. There's a type of mincha that's actually a mincha of a sin offering, but the person didn't have the means to bring the animal, so he brings the flour offering. Which sins is that? Does they do the mincha? I think it's for contaminating the temple, for swearing falsely. There's a few that go into that category. So we say that the minchas chayte comes before a voluntary mincha donation, right? Because that comes as an atonement, comes as a sin, for a sin. It says, Adarabba, minchas nedava kedemes. We should say that the voluntary one, is the donation one comes first. Shekain, tuna, shem, and olvainu, because it has more mitzvahs. It has oil and it also has frankincense, which are not applied to the sin offering. It says, Afilu hachi, nevertheless, minchas chayte abal chayt adifa, the mechaperes, because it atones. And the atonement shows that it's more significant. Okay. Yibaylo, the Gemara has a question. Minchas saita, minchas nedava. What about a minchas saita? Saita is not the minchas chayte. Minchas chayte is for those other sins. The saita brings an offering to ascertain if she is guilty. It's not an atonement for her. It's just it comes to verify what's happening. So what does that take precedence over a donation? Mincha. Ezemem kedemes. Which one comes first? Minchas nedava kadma. Do we say the minchas nedava, the donation comes first? Came to Hashem and levaina, because it has oil and frankincense. The saita doesn't have anything on it. It was just like a plain barley flour. Dilma minchas saita kadma. Came balavar ravain. Maybe it's because it's coming to verify if she is guilty. Right? That's what the part of the process of the saita. She brings the offering. Which one comes first? That's our question. Which one would be? The saita? No, she's about to die.
Or not.
Or not? Yeah, that's not a thank you.
No, but no.
No.
She's saying that because she's not gonna die, she's gonna get all these brachas. Because if it doesn't atone, what's the purpose of the?
It's part of the process to make it. In order for all the water to work, you have to do the whole process. You have to do this. You do this. Yeah. Toshima. So come and listen. We learned in the Mishnah that minchas chayte kedemes to minchas nedava. Minchas chayte comes before the nedava. The sin offering mincha comes before the donation one. Minchas chayte the kan minchas nedava. You only said the sin offering comes before. Minchas saita light, but not the minchas saita that doesn't come before. See, that's a proof. The fact that you didn't say it means the Gemara says miktani mipneishi mechaperes mipneishi baal chet katani v'hanami baal chet. It doesn't say that it's an atonement. It says that because it comes for a sin. So the saita also comes for a sin. You're asking maybe she didn't sin. But the fact that she was secluded would be a sin.
But we know that it doesn't atone.
Doesn't atone.
What?
But the wording of the Mishnah was very precise. The Mishnah in other cases says, why does the chatas come before the oila? Because it atones. When it comes to the mincha, it says, why does the mincha come before the minchas of the sin offering come before the donation? Because it comes for a sin. It doesn't use the word atone. We say, what about the saita offering? It says, well, the fact that it didn't say because it atones, it says it comes because of sin, is coming to include the saita. So the saita would come first. That's a proof. Yeah? Tashma. Come listen. It says, Zu kedemes lezu. This mincha comes before this mincha. Zu ba min achitin, v'zu ba min asayin. This comes from wheat, this one comes from barley. My love, what is it talking about? Minchas nedava, the mincha saita. Minchas nedava comes before the minchas saita because the nedava comes from wheat and the saita comes from barley. We said it, an animal, remember? Animal food. She acted like an animal, so animal food. It says, Loi, that's not what I'm talking about. It says, minchas chayte le minchas saita. The sin offering of the minchas chayte comes before the saita. We still don't have an answer for the minchas nedava. The Gemara says, well, typically the mechaperes, why do you have to say flour versus wheat? You could have said a tone versus not a tone. Elamai must be talking about minchas nedava, because both of them don't atone. So it had to say that this one is wheat and this one is barley. So typically the zu tan shemen levina v'zu ain't shemen levina. If that's the case, then it could have said that this one, it didn't have to say wheat and barley. It could have said flour and oil. Not flour and oil and frankincense. And this one doesn't have oil. Ella chad mitzvei taminaka. That's not. It was just choosing one out of different options, but it's actually talking about the Still don't have an answer. That's what it's saying. Chad mitzvei taminaka means it's not going to give us a full answer, because maybe the reason why it doesn't say mechaperes is because it just chose one. Maybe it is talking about the minchas chayte, or maybe it's talking about the minchas nedava. Why doesn't it say shemen levina? Well, it just shows one. It shows the flour. It didn't have to tell me every single detail. So now I'm left with, I don't know what the comparison here was. When it says zu kaidemus lezu, is it talking about the minchas chayte comes before the minchas chayte? But does it talking about the minchas nedava comes before the minchas chayte? I don't know. Okay. Leaves it, it's left as a question. Chata sa'if kaidemes, the chata sa'if comes before the oila sa'if. Now this is a little surprise, because the chata sa'if is brought on the lower part of the altar, and the oila sa'if goes on the higher part, and we know that the higher part is holier. But it says minani mili. How do you know that the chata sa'if comes before the oila? The Tana Rabbanu started in Bryce because it's a shelachatas rishayna. What is this talking about? I think this is talking about the woman that gives birth. Let's take a look.
Why is not this below? If off is above, and tatas is normally above, so why when you put tatas enough together, you all of a sudden get above? Negative times negative.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You have to the symbol to remember is that the oila sa'if is above. Oila goes up and oif flies up. That goes above. But anything that you start adjusting it, then it starts going down. So the oilas behema goes down and the chata sa'if goes down.
Interesting. Even though normally chatas is up.
Only the chatas that's up is the chatas behema goes up. Back up. Yeah.
That was the second.
They give all the reasons that you give.
Question.
Enter in the thing. Like.
Tell me.
What
are we speaking about? Oh, I'm looking up here. Oh, okay, yeah. So 1 second. Where's the pasuk? This is Hey Pes. Oh, okay. Okay, so yeah, we're talking about over here the minchas chayte. Yeah. Not the minchas chayte. Here we're not at the mincha yet. We're holding at the birds. By the carbon, it's called the carbon oila b'yored, where if you're in this tax bracket, you bring the sliding scale, right? You bring the animal or the bird or the meal offering. So when it comes to the birds, it says that you have to bring shtei tayrim ishnei b'nei yoina echad lechatas ve'echad la'oila. Which one is done first? It says v'izim midam achatas al kerem mizbeach. So here we have, and it says clearly, v'hikriv es asher lachatas rishayna. It says that you bring the chatas first. Why does it have to tell us to me? Doesn't need to tell me that you bring it first, because it says the second one is the. Why does it have to say that you bring the chatas first? It's coming to tell me a binyanav. Binyanav means it's going to give me a precedent that every time there's ever a chatas and oila together, you always bring the chatas first. Bein chatas oif loilas oif, bein chatas behema loilas behema. I feel a chatas oif loilas behema. Wow, even a chatas oif is going to come before an loilas behema. Hilkach, therefore, chatas oif loilas oif mi vesasheni. Chatas oif before the loilas oif, I have from vesasheni. That's what that it told me, right? Because that's what we're dealing with right here. It says the second one you bring as a oila. Chatas behema, loilas behema, midrab rachmana. Because I have what we said, it says Maseches Echad chatas. Oh, that was by the Levium. By the Levium, it says that you bring two sacrifices. He said Maseches Echad chatas Maseches Echad oila. When we said, why does it have to say that? Chatas kedemes l'chol ma'aseh oila. No. That's the dam chatas comes before the oila. Maseches Echad chatas oila tells me that the blood of the chatas comes before. That's midirabi rachmana. And now chatas oif loilas behema mizeh binyanav, from this binyanav, from the binyanav. That's where we get it from. Okay. Tashma. He said that a chatas oif comes before loilas behema. Come and listen. Rabbi Lezer Reimer, Lezer says kol makom shenischal chatas. Anytime that you were supposed to bring an animal chatas, but you exchanged it for something else. Now, exchange doesn't mean that you like tmura. Exchange means that instead you're going to bring birds, or you're going to bring a meal offering. But over here, it's talking about the birds. And now I'm left with two birds, and one of the birds is a chatas, and one of them is an oila. So it says chatas kedemes. The chatas always comes first. Bekan, but in this case, by the yeledes, oila kedemes. See, this is slightly different because here, the yeledes is supposed to bring an oila in the chatas. The oila is typically a sheep, and the chatas is typically the bird. However, if the yeledes, the woman that gave birth, is poor, then the oila is also a bird. Bird for an oila and a bird for a chatas. The chatas was always a bird. The oila was supposed to be the animal. We say, in this case, the oila comes first. Now we say, kol makim shaba al chait, chatas kedemes. Whenever there's a sin, then the chatas comes first. Kan oila kedemes. Over here, the carbon's not brought for a sin, so therefore the oila comes first. Now this is ignoring that the drash, that a woman, when she's giving birth, takes a vow that she's never going to conceive again because of the pain that she's going through, and she has to bring a sacrifice for violating the oath. It's ignoring that. Yeah, whatever the case is, there's a drush that says that it's brought. What's the sin? We're saying that it's not for a sin. It's a sin offering, but it's not for a sin. Okay. Whenever you have two birds that are being brought for one chatas, what case would that be? That's the case of the minchas chayte, where whatever the sin was by the minchas chayte, contaminating the temple or swearing falsely. Over there, you would bring one animal or two birds, or even poorer, you bring the meal offering. But from one animal turns into two birds. In that case, chatas kedemes. The chatas comes first. However, Bekan, by the yeledes, that she would bring an animal and a bird. So we say that the oila comes first, oila kedemes. Now, what's the problem?
Question. all these cases, is this where one person is bringing multiple korbanos, or is it where maybe two people are showing up at the same time? There's only one Kohen, and the question is, who does he take care of?
Do they walk the line and be like, okay, who's got this? Like,
That's both. I think it's both, because we're mentioning cases where it's one person bringing both. Like for example, the Yevadas, she has to
We
bring a
also
this.
mentioned-
We also mentioned that if there's other sacrifices that are
It's
be,
basically the trumping one.
Yeah.
the person who's in the TSA line, like, you know, I haven't played 10 minutes.
clear, they always put the clear first because they pay extra money for that. Even the TSA, you ever see that?
So
Okay.
when you're coming back from Israel, there ain't no TSA.
Sorry about that. Who said you come back? Stay there.
Just 1 second. Okay. Amarava. Rava. So the question is that we have a contradiction between what we said before. But before we said that that a chatas always comes before an oila, even if it's a chatas oif and an oilas behema. Now we're saying that a oila comes before the chatas by the yoledas. Over here, the oila comes first. Okay. Amarava lemikrektim akasav. The fact that it says that the oila comes before the chatas, that's the way it's read in the Torah. But regarding the way it's brought, we don't do it like that. Interesting. The way it's brought, actually, the chatas comes first. So how is it read in the Torah? What do you mean the way it's read in the Torah? That they would have to read the portion? Let me go further. Yeah? They would read the portion when they brought the sacrifice? Every time they brought a sacrifice, they would read the portion along with it? So what does it mean for the portion? No, just by one who reviews the passage. Why is the oila mentioned before?
When you mentioned it, it sounded like
Some learn that it has to do. I see in the note over here. Some learn that it has to do with how it was consecrated. That she has to consecrate the oila first, even though the chatas is brought first. Tashma param kain leilim eilim kaitim lekvasim kvasim l'seirim. It says that the bull comes before the ram comes before the sheep come before the goats. My love, the dry bones. My love, is it not talking about the Chag? It's talking about the Musaf on Sukkot, where they had over there, Chatas was a goat and the sheep were the Oila. And it's saying over there that what comes first? It says that the sheep come before the goat. That would be a problematic because the sheep is the Oila and the goat is the Chatas. We said always that the Chatas comes first. It says Lai, Linadava. It's talking about when someone's bringing just an Oilas Nadava, and if he brings a big animal, that comes before the smaller animal. Because the libations are more, the three-tenths of an ephah. Elim lekvasim is also because it's the kvasim 2/10 of an ephah instead of 1/10 of an ephah. Kvasim l'seirim shkinis rabu ba'alya, and the kvasim, the sheep, come before the goat because it has an extra fat tail that's brought on the altar, so that's precedent. Tashma. Parkain Mashiach. Kaiden leparam davar shel tzibur. Param davar shel tzibur kan lepar avedis kechavim. Par avedis chum kan l'sir avedis kechavim. Okay, the Parkain Mashiach is when the Kohen Gadol does a sin. Helam davar shel tzibur is when the congregation sins. The par of avodah zara is an interesting sacrifice that was really a oila. Just 1 second. Let me just take this. Okay. Can you hear me? So the par avedis kechavim kainul masir avedis kechavim. Now, alphagav the par avedis kechavim oila. The problem is that here we have an oila. Masir avedis kechavim is a chatas. Yeah. So if you have those two, you bring the par first. It's coming out that an oila comes before a chatas. Umar says, "Ve'ima mereisha." Why are you asking a question from the last case? You should ask a question before. It says, "Par ham davar shel tzibur kainul par avedis kechavim." Well, that's a chatas, and this is an oila. Chatas always comes before an oila. So it says, why are you asking a question? Bring a proof. It says, well, b'chad mina mi alei kamrina, the chatas kadma. From the beginning, it's not a proof that the oila is first, because it's the same, both of them are a par. Ki kamrin betray meaning. We're talking about where a par of Avodah Zarah and a sur of Avodah Zarah. One's a par and one's an Avodah Zarah. We said before that chatas ha'oif would come even before an oilas behema. Now we have a par of Avodah Zarah, which comes before a par of Avodah Zarah, which is an oila, the bull of the Avodah comes before the goat of Avodah Zarah, which that's a chatas.
What does that mean?
It means if when they committed the sin of Avodah
doing
Zarah,
Avodah Zarah,
they have
then
to
they
bring
bring
an
it.
oila, a
Okay.
chatas and an oila.
Okay.
So which one comes first? It's saying that the oila comes first, which is not typical. Problem is that the par of Avodah Zarah, which is an oila, is coming before the goat of the chatas, which means that a larger oila comes before a smaller chatas. And this contradicts what we said before, that even a bird chatas comes before an animal oila. Amrid Maravat, they answered in Eretz Yisrael, Mishmei the Rav Mari, chatas avedus kechavim chaser aleph. When it says the word chatas in the Torah, it's missing the aleph from the word chatas. Seir izim echad lechatas without an aleph. What's it coming to tell me? It's because lechatas ksiv coming to tell me that it's different than all other chatais, and the oila, it doesn't come before the oila. Ravina Amar kamishpat ksibu. It says kamishpat. B'niskai kamishpat. Mishpat's telling me that I have to do with the way it was read in the Torah, which the oila comes first.
Amen.
That's the case. Excuse me. That's the case. Afilu tema. Once we answer Ravina that it says kamishpat, you have to do the way it's read in the Torah. So you could even say parim dechag nami kamishpat ksibu. We had a question at the beginning when we said it seems like we're bringing the goats.
Goods.
The goat of a chatas, on Sukkot, seems like we're bringing that after the sheep, which was the oila. We said that no, it wasn't talking about. But the truth is that once it says kamishpat, then it's not a problem. It says clearly in the pasuk kamishpat, so then that would be an exception. Okay, the Gemara has a question. Chatas ha'oif ba'ilas behema. Meiser. If we have three things over here, I have a sin offering, bird sin offering, elevation offering, animal. I have also a meiser. Which one comes first? Well, tiktam chatas ha'oif. To do the chatas ha'oif first, tiktam meiser the kadam lay. Meiser comes before a chatas ha'oif. Why? Because an animal comes before a bird. Lick the meiser to do the meiser first. The oilas behema comes first. So tiktam oilas behema. It seems like the oilas behema should come before everything. Well, like a chatas oif the we said that a sin offering of a chatas comes
It's
first.
a shell game.
So hacha targimo over here in Bavel they explain this, that what you should do is that you should bring the meiser first because min zevach adif, because an animal comes before. Now you can't do the oilas behema before the chatas oif, because it's exersa kasav. Ma'arava Amri, however, in Eretz Yisrael, they said Ayla ba. Ayla ba ayla speima b'chatas oif. Agbeta l'meiser. Let me see what they say. What you should do is superiority of the animal oila to the meiser permeates the bird chatas that accompanies it. And elevates it over the meiser. Even though the meiser is a slaughtered offering, thus the bird chatas is offered first, followed by the oila and then the meiser. They have a totally different. How does this work? The animal oila and bird chatas are brought as a set by the new mother, and the oila component of this set is more sacred than the conflicting meiser, since it is Kedesh Kadashim and is entirely consigned to the altar. Although the oila is a slaughtered offering, Scripture has decreed that the bird chatas should precede it. Since it has been elevated over this slaughtering offering, it is also elevated over the meiser offering, which is secondary to the bird's companion offering. Meiser's traditional advantage over a bird is overridden in this case by Scripture's decree that the bird chatas precedes the companion offering. Say that the ayla ba'olas behema chatas. The advantage of the olas behema goes into the chatas ha'oif, which means the chatas ha'oif is going to come first. And it elevates it over the meiser, though the meiser is supposed to come first, but the fact that the Torah tells me that the oilas, the chatas comes before the oila, that takes it over the meiser as well.
Sounds like also saying to avoid the shell game with three, just come in with two. And whichever has present, we do that. Then bring the third.
Yeah, maybe
Because
that's
if
the
you're
shot.
bringing three,
Yeah.
there's
Everybody
always
knows
going
the
to be
reference of the
this
shell
is this is this.
game.
And which
So
makes
is it
sense.
it's saying is it saying actually to take one out, or is it saying that
I'm
it's
saying
automatically?
no, not to bring it in.
But is that what it means to leave it out?
That's what it sounds like.
Everyone
Otherwise, you
knows the
sound like,
reference to a
hey,
shell
you're coming in with three at a time. Or even
Okay, let's leave it here. Yeah.
game. So this is waiting
Have a good day.
in the parking lot.